New Black Media, holding it down. New Black Media Archives is the backbone to what gets done on this side of town. What's up, Quan? If y'all not following New Black Media Archives, make sure you do, because this is New Black Media Appreciation Month, and people like New Black Media Archives, they're the backbone, because YouTube do all that tripping, and all these Twitter spaces, they trip on all that stuff. So places like New Black Media Archives is a place that you can go to get Needy Fuller, Tariq, Brother Black. A lot of my content's up there. So if y'all not following New Black Media Archives, make sure y'all do that, because the stuff that's really tough, that the real talk that they do their best to suppress, that brother got it all archived. So we good. What's up, Jay? What's up, everybody up in here? But we're going to get up to talking about, is AI music a threat to music, or is it a saving grace? And I'm going to want to hear what some of y'all got to say. I want to hear y'all opinions on this. I want to hear, have a discussion on it, because I just decided to do this space like 10 minutes ago. I probably should have gave it a little more time to give people time to get up in here. But I got the heater repair man coming over to the house, and I got to be off when Hector gets here. And I live in LA, so all the repair folks out here is Mexican. I tried looking for a black dude 2 weeks. So yeah, when they get here, I got to get up off here. So I just want to come and talk about it. But the topic is AI music a threat to real music or not? And the reason why I'm having this discussion is there's a lot of people who there's been a lot of songs coming out lately, and it's been coming out the bag that AI is been making it. I want to start off by saying, first off, spoiler alert: AI has been making beats for a lot of these so-called producers for years now. This ain't nothing new. AI has been around making music for a while. It's just a lot of these producers will put their names on stuff that was done by AI. But now we're at a point to where the cat's out the bag and AI is becoming a thing. And I can all but guarantee an AI Grammy win between now and 2026 is going to happen. I'm thinking maybe 2025. But there will be an AI producer or artist that wins a Grammy sometime in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think ultimately that's a good thing. What's up, Sincere? A real musician up in here. And Sincere, I'm definitely going to hear what your thoughts on this. But I think ultimately it can be a good thing, because music has been so heavily, how can I say this? Music has been so heavily quantized and monotonized over the last 35 plus years. The degradation of music started in the 80s. But in the 90s is when the real programmed sound really took over. Because although you had the phony, fake instruments in the 80s, you still had live musicians playing those sounds. When you get to the 90s, is when you get, just one person, one producer, as you get to the late 80s, early 90s, just doing everything. And then by the time you get to the 2000s, it's just basically cut and paste, copy and paste music, no soul. So on some levels, I don't want to sound like one of those I don't want to sound like we one of those we our own worst enemy kind of niggas. But in a lot of ways, we did it to ourselves by allowing this soulless music to take over during the 2000s. When you're talking about what Bad Boy Records was doing, when you're talking about a lot of that stuff in the 2000s, where that when, and no disrespect to Atlanta, I'm not disrespecting y'all, but when y'all took over R&B, that's when all of the soul left R&B as Atlanta in the 2000s. And I'm talking about early Atlanta, not talking about Tony Braxton Atlanta '93. I ain't talking about that in the face. I'm talking about as we get into the late 90s and into the 2000s when the R&B scene, for the most part, Usher and all that stuff became the sound out of Atlanta. R&B got very quantized, very just straight up, soulless music, just no soul, just a sound, and that set it up for your Rihannas to come along and just really kill off our music. And what we've had over the last decade with the non-foundation of Black Americans basically taking over the top 40 charts. So that's where we are right now. And since we've allowed that to become the sound over the last 20 years, now AI is taking over. And AI is about to kick everybody out there who programming bullshit ass beats to the curb. Because AI can when it comes to programming, don't nothing program better than AI. But here's the beautiful thing within this. Music isn't a program. It's art. It's soulful expression. AI can never get that part. So for the people out there putting their soul into music, this could actually be a beacon of light, a crack in the door, a window. Because AI is going to out AI all of these top 40 productions we've been getting over the last 20 years. So it might be some kind of a window, some kind of opening, some kind of space for us. And I want to hear something sincere. I know you cut hair, bro. I don't know if you can speak, but I would like to hear some of your thoughts on this because I know that you do music and there's a soulfulness within your sound. And I want to know what it is, what you think. So yeah. What's up, brother? And if anyone wants to speak, just raise your hand, ask to be tapped in, and I want to hear you guys' opinion too. And we can just make this a discussion moving forward. Go ahead, Sincere. Let them know where you come from, who you are, and then let me know your opinion on this.
Yes, indeed. I'm here, fam. Appreciate you bringing me up. For those of y'all that don't know, my name is Sincere. I'm from New York, but I live down here in Atlanta. I'm a hip hop artist, heavy into the music thing. Um, Honestly, I don't even know how to feel about this whole thing. You know what I'm saying? I agree with um, some of what you're saying, even though I'm a fan of some of the music, some of the program music that we're talking about, I still know the difference between that and the stuff that I was raised off of from my parents and my grandparents also. You know what I'm saying? And so with the AI thing, it's like what I'm looking at right now is the law side of it. Like how it looked like the industry trying to play catch up. Like they late in the game trying to figure out how to wrap their mind around what's going on and protect people's rights and all of that. From what I understand right now, you're not able to really copyright or patent your voice. And so really the AI programmers have free reign to just mimic somebody's voice and do whatever they want to do with it. Not only that, but even with the music, um some of the samples, they able to redo the samples without actually sampling, you know what I'm saying? But it's the same melody, it's the same rhythm, but they not infringing on your copyright with it. So I'm looking at that standpoint of, okay, how is that going to affect the artists and the musicians, you know what I'm saying? So from that standpoint, I see it as being a negative. As far as what you saying, as it creating a lane for real musicians to be able to do something, that lane kind of exists now because, like you said, the mainstream stuff that they give us is already watered down. So that opened up the lane for real artists and musicians. But the thing is, you got to search for it, you got to find it, and you got to even desire it in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So it's still going to be on the musicians to be able to raise their profile and to be able to attract the audience. I don't think it's going to be a thing where people going to be like, oh, this AI stuff sucks. Where's the real music at? And start looking more toward the real musicians. I think they're just going to go along with the programming the same way that they have been. You know what I'm saying? With them taking out the instruments from the music in the first place. It was a whole programming type of thing that they did on society. And I think people still going to go on that train and, niggas gonna be rocking with the AI and trying to tell us that the AI is the real shit.
I'm glad you brought that up. You brought up a good point. And I appreciate your perspective on that because for the most part, the 85% of the people out there, they just go along with what's given to them. That's just true across the board with everything. The 85% just sort of fall in line. And that's especially true when it comes to music. Most people just turn the radio on and they're going to listen to what's being played. Or they're going to hear their friends or their social circle talk about a song or an artist that's popular, and they're going to look at that particular song or artist and start listening to them too. That's how 85% of people can consume their music. When I was talking about a lane opening up, this is what I was thinking about for musicians. Because for the producers that we see out there programming these beats, these very simple beats in this program music, the way I'm looking at it is it might not be much work for that style artist as we move forward. You know what I mean? Because it's like McDonald's. It's not much work for McDonald's workers because the AI bots are taking over the McDonald's job. So when McDonald's used to need 10, 20 people to run a restaurant in the kitchen, now AI is doing most of it, and these robots coming in is going to do the rest. To where you may just need one or two people managing what used to a bunch of robots. And so I'm thinking that's where music is headed. And so now, for the people who actually do music, they're going to be forced to learn how to pick up an instrument again. You know what I mean? It won't be because you're not going to be able to out AI when it comes to this program stuff, when it comes to sampling, when it comes to remixing what's already been done, when it comes to trying to recreate a sound. You're not going to be able to outdo no when AI, especially as AI gets better and better, you're not going to find a human that can outdo AI when it comes to that segment of the game. So I think where this is going, and let me know your opinion on this, Sincere. Where this is going is the next evolution in music because, and when it comes to evolving music, we're the only people on the planet that do it. Everyone else falls in line after us. We're the only people on the planet that have the ability to stay ahead of the AI. And so, what do you think about that as far as what it's going to force from the produced musicians moving forward?
Nah, that's right and exact. The AI are gonna be the new culture vultures because they still gotta copy us. You know what I'm saying? They still gotta go with wherever we going. You know what I'm saying? We gonna be the blueprint for AI to be able to mimic. You know what I'm saying? So that I agree with that 100%. You know what I mean? And so yeah, what you saying about the people being forced to have to really get in their bag and start learning how to play real music and all of that, that could be a great thing. You know what I'm saying? That could create a whole new resurgence. You know what I'm saying? But people got to get to the real instruments and not just the computers and the programming and all that, because that made it so accessible and so easy for people. That's why like everybody's a damn artist now. You know what I'm saying? Because they could just get a laptop, download a couple programs, and all of a sudden you Quincy Jones and shit. You know what I'm saying? But we're gonna need some real programs in our communities, like some of the OG musicians. We gotta create some infrastructure for them to be able to pass down what they know. You know what I'm saying?
And that's all.
Create some spaces where kids could go and really learn.
And let me give some game because I know you down there in Atlanta, and I don't know what the streets are. I don't know. I'm not gonna sit there and act like I know what's going on the streets in Atlanta because I don't. But I can give you some information on how it's happening here in LA, and hopefully, if Atlanta's not doing it, they could pick it up. If you notice, the live musicians music sound never left LA, and in order to get this program sound, the industry had to stop creating music. It had to leave LA from being the center of our rhythm and blues. Because as long as rhythm and blues is centered here, it's going to have a live sound. Even hip hop, Dr. Dre had, live musicians, the 1500 and nothing crew, on a lot of this shit, Daz and all them. The reason why when those guys came up, whether we're talking about uh, the 1500 and nothing guys, the Kamasi Washingtons, Terrace Martin's Thundercats, One, we had some dope ass between Jordan High School and Locke High School. There are a couple public schools that kept a music program around. It was only one or two, and Hamilton High also. But that handful of music schools produced public schools that had musicians produce people. And for the people who didn't go through the school process, over in Leimert Park, a lot of your musicians had like the World Stage Theater. Barbara Morrison, the great jazz, great singer, she had the Barbara Morrison Pavilion over in Leimert Park. You had the older guys sort of create uh, cultural music learning environments to where when Terrace Martin was coming up, when Kamasi was coming up, when a lot of your guys who were at the forefront of jazz, when they were coming up as teenagers, they had more so a place in Leimert Park. Like LA's a big city. These places weren't everywhere. It was just one or two centers here and there to where the kids who picked up instruments had a desire to learn music. They would go through there, and then as kids would, be there, they got a friend. My friend plays the guitar. Hey, come on down to the World Stage Theater in Leimert Park. It was just a handful of places in Southern California that older musicians established that young musicians could come through and learn. And that handful of places was just enough to keep a vein of live musicianship open in the city to where now we have Catalyst, we have all of these other groups coming out here and birthing a live sound. And a lot of these guys are the musicians behind a lot of the live music that we hear today. My question for you, brother, is you in Atlanta, are there scenes like that now going on in that city? And if anyone wants to speak, that's a musician, are there scenes like that going on in your city? Because we don't need everyone. We just need enough elders, a handful, to open up access to have a place for the young guys to come through to learn our music and pass it down.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say that there's not because I don't know everything that's popping in the city. You know what I'm saying? But I know they have a jazz fest out here every year. But that's kind of like something that they just put on for the people. You know what I'm saying? People come out, have a good time for the day, food and music and all of that. But it's not really as much of a learning environment, a place where people could get mentored. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's pockets of stuff like that's taking place. I was in the studio a couple of weeks ago with a bunch of live musicians. You know what I'm saying? But these guys, I'm talking to them
Yeah.
about, getting out there. They're kind of like in their own world. You know what I'm saying? They go down. They got a studio in the basement of a car dealership, and they meet up there. Every week, and they in there playing and they jamming. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm talking to them about, you know, getting out there. Let's do some shows. Let's go out and perform. I want to rock with y'all. You know what I'm saying? Why none of y'all ain't on social media like that? I'm looking at all their social media like, yo, why y'all not moving and shaking? They just in their own little bubble doing what they do, but they great musicians. And so I'm trying to get them out they shell. I'm telling them they need to come to the barbershop one Saturday and just play. You know what I'm saying? While we in there cutting hair, whatever. But also we need to get out and start performing. Let's hit some of these stages. They got different festivals and stuff that take place around the city, especially throughout the summer, where we could get on those lineups and start putting on. You know what I mean? Because once people see it, that's when the thing that you're talking about is going to begin to grow. You know what I'm saying? Especially when the youth come out and they might be in the crib, working on something, and now they see somebody, what I mean, out there doing their thing that they could touch and say, "Yo, this is what I'm trying to learn." You know what I'm saying? And we could exchange information and create those type of events and environments.
Yeah, I agree with that because music. We gotta remember, like culturally, music is that's our communication circle. All right, let's go a little bit. Let's go into some. Let's go a little deep into music and how music works. Music is the circle that we use to express ourselves and communicate and emote our feeling and express ourselves as to what's going on and to communicate to the conditions that we're dealing with sonically. It's a way to get it out without bitching, moaning, and complaining and crying all day, saying, "Oh, these massa ain't doing this." We express it through the music, and the crowd feels the emotion we playing the music with, and they dance and they release their emotions through the music. Music is how we wash away our sins. You know what I mean? And when I say wash away our sins, I ain't got nothing to do with repeating some Jesus up in the sky. That means washing away the issues and the problems and the traumas of the day. But that comes through a sense of community and through community. And music is a communal thing. And what's happened since the 80s is, like what you just said, the problem you just pointed out to, and I'm glad you brought that up, is musicians are now sectioning themselves off, and it became vogue and somewhat of an ego trip to say, hey, I did all of this myself. Now, there have always been musicians who can play all of the music themselves. And that got really popularized, in the Prince era. And again, I don't want somebody to come back and be like, Dwayne was talking shit about Prince. Not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is this. Just pay attention to people who like Prince and what they say. Man, Prince was able to produce, write, and do all that stuff himself. That's true. But that was Prince's talent. Overall, music isn't something that's selfish for one person. That's a shared common experience. And through that shared common experience of emotions getting emoted through our instrument and through our vocals, we then, as the listener, pick up on that shared common experience, and our problems get dissolved away in that sonic interpretation of our experiences. Now, Prince wasn't the first person. Stevie Wonder did the whole Intervisions and fulfilling his first finale album by himself. Sly Stone, the album with I'm Everyday People, not that album because Larry Graham based the Fresh album. He did most of that album all by himself. There've always been musicians who can do it all themselves. Roger Troutman, he could do it all himself. A lot of the Zap stuff, he, you know, that's a common thing. Like, we're very talented people, but what happened when people started hearing Prince doing that, you heard a lot of people as the '80s went along in the '90s, and the technology made it more easy for producers to do music on their own. That became kind of an ego thing. I did it all myself. I did it all myself. And if you trace back and look at it big picture, that's around the same time our music went left and our music stopped being as rich. When our music stopped being as fun, when our music stopped being as communal, was when the producers decided, because of the technology, to do it all themselves. Now you have it to where the technology made it to where the live musicians can do what Sincere said, go into the basement and do it all themselves. And the end result of that is a project that sounds good, but does it feel good? And that's what I want to transition to talking about as far as AI
And
music wise.
also,
Go ahead.
does anybody care, or does anybody even know? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like I feel like they feel marginalized because of everything that's put out by the mainstream. All the watered down stuff gets the most shine. And so the real musicians, I feel like they feel marginalized to where they feel like it's only for them. It's only for that small circle.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I feel like they don't think it's going to be received the way that it should be received. And so that's why they keep it to themselves. But the other thing that I wanted to ask you too, like, how is it going to affect like concerts and shows and all of that when it comes to this AI thing? Like, you know what I'm saying? They're going to put holograms on the stage. I understand how it could work with Web3 and the metaverse and all of that. But live performances, you need some real bodies out there.
I'm glad you asked, my brother. I'm glad you asked, because um with that's why I'm saying about, this is ultimately, this benefits real musicians and real musicianship, because look at what's been going on. Let's go back to that Rihanna Super Bowl performance. The listener is so dumbed down, and I'm not calling y'all people who like the. I make it very clear. I'm not calling the people who like the performance dumb or stupid. I'm talking about the overall bar that we once had for performance has gotten so lowered and dumbed down that a Super Bowl performance where basically she wasn't singing, wasn't dancing, and got lifted up and down on some damn beam. People called that an incredible performance because of the pyrotechnics and the technology. It's like at a point to where with the current pop artists, the people don't go to pop artists concerts for music. They go for a show. And these shows are laced with pyrotechnics and expensive lighting and holograms and stuff. So the artist of the last 20 years has programmed the the concert goer. Look what's that dude, The Weeknd? I saw part of his performance on HBO. He halfway does a 10% version of a Michael Jackson step. He does it about 3% as good as Michael Jackson. He doesn't really do anything. The background singers and the pyrotechnics and the lights are doing all the work. So it's like the popular artists of today has already programmed the audience not to expect much. Only thing you need is to make sure those subwoofers are pumping, because subwoofers are gonna vibrate the guts inside of you. When the subs hit, you're gonna feel it. It doesn't have to be good music, but the subs make you feel it. So get good subwoofers, get a bunch of fire, a bunch of lasers, a bunch of lights, and this is your concert. And so the people who buy top 40 concert tour tickets are already conditioned to this. So AI and these holograms is going to do it better than the dream. At least the hologram can at least get the Michael Jackson dance steps down. You dig? So
Yeah, you
that
ain't
is
lying
where it's
there.
going. And for this top 40 shit. But what it is opening up a lane, because there's something in your soul, my soul, all of our souls that connect to real music. And it's going to get people to react to those who are doing the music the right way. Something in their soul is going to push them to those guys. But I see you want to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying you ain't lying, because even when you look at them EDM and those techno shows and all that, it's just a DJ up there, not even a real DJ. It's just a dude up there with a computer
Pressing
and a bunch
buttons.
of lights, and you got tens of thousands of people. It's sold out. Right, right. And they high on they on whatever pills they on, and they gone. They in that thing.
Yeah. I see this AI as a blessing in disguise. It is going to outdo all that bullshit ass music. You're not going to have a need for these guys because of AI.
I get it. I get your narrative. I get your narrative.
And so, but where there is going to be a need, there's going to be a need for people who can pick up an instrument, because it's a soul. I had this conversation on y'all know I do Craig Facts on Tuesdays. It was Dicey. She's the Latino lady that's on that show, on Craig's show, and we were talking about music. She was asking me about, what's happening with live music, and like she was like, basically we were talking about how like white Mexicans and stuff like a lot of our old soul music, and I made a point, and her reaction told me I was right on point about culturally. I was like, look, as humans, and this is just game. The reason why the rest of the world be connected to our old music and stuff like that, and the reason why the youth, the babies, connect to Michael Jackson and stuff like that, because when live musicians is played from the people of the earth, the black people, those with soul. Music of the 70s and 60s was the last time we were able to touch our music unmolested by them folks. That was the last time our music was unmolested. That's when it was whatever black person said, this is the final edit, that's it, it gets put out. That's why that music connects so much, because it's like it's a soup, it's a stew. And how it works is every musician that's on that project has a soul. And their souls are being placed in every note, in in the phrasing, in every word. There's a human's soul going into that. And when we play our music as musicians, and one thing about the funk, one thing about soul music, it's not about the note, it's about how you play the note. That's how the gospel is. I come from playing in the church. You know what I mean? You can't just play ding 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 ding. That shit's cheesy. We gotta play it ding 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 da. Uh. It's a feeling. And let me tell you why AI can never fuck with us as Black Americans. We don't play on the beat. We play between the beats. And the beauty and the richness within our music is in how we play the notes, where the notes land. our notes don't land on the beat. They're always just off. And that off is the space in which your soul operates. Because the music happens between those spaces. And the note is just a reminder of where you are in time. It's like looking at the clock. But when you live your life, are you looking at the clock all day or are you living? That 2 and the 4 is just to remind you what time it is. And even that time is never on time. It's always a little bit late because that's how we are. On the drums, that 2 and the 4, if I play that shit on beat, you're going to look at me like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I got to play that 2 and the 4 just behind the beat in order for you to feel the groove. And that's something that AI can't get. And so I said all that to say, when I was talking to the Mexican lady about that, I was like, on a particular song, say you have a singer, and you have a singer and you have a band. And the band, drummer, bass, keys, 3 horns, 3 background singers, maybe another keyboard. Those are all souls of human beings going into every note that's purposely putting an emotion within the music. And when you play a song, that the reason why we have genres, because the genre tells you what kind of emotion to place into the song. If I'm doing a top 40 song, it's gonna be a little faster, a little on the beat, a little more on the beat, a little faster, a little more jovial, a little more upbeat. If I'm playing blues, it's gonna be a little slacking. If I'm playing Mississippi blues, it's gonna be real slow, like how you Mississippi niggas talk, hella slow. Versus if I play Kansas City blues, it's gonna be faster and it's gonna be shuffling. Cause Kansas City niggas is some fast talking, shuffling ass niggas. You know what I mean? And all these different emotions are gonna go into the song. And you don't know that consciously. You're not thinking these things, but these things are all going in. This information is all going into every single note played. So what happens is, even though that song may be 60 years old, 40 years old, and even though these Mexicans don't speak English and don't know what the fuck we was going through here in America, when they listen to Smokey Robinson, when they listen to Martha and the Vandellas, and when they listen to War, they feel the transmission of soul from their souls to your souls, to my souls, to our souls. And that transition of soul is the communication that happens between the listener, and that's the relationship developed between the listener and the musician. And music that has souls being placed into it, there's a soul of the sound engineer. When the sound engineer said, no, we need to bend this note this way versus that way, there's somebody's soul that went into that decision. You know what I mean? And that soul to soul communication is the magic within our music. And AI can't ever get that. You can't put a soul into AI, especially when soulless peoples are the ones programming the AI. Do y'all think AI could ever get a soul when these motherfuckers play it themselves and they can't do it themselves with soul? You think they could program soul? Soul is the ingredient that makes our music special. Soul is the ingredient, is the thing that when people that don't even speak our language can turn around and listen to our music and act like it's theirs. It's because of the soul that's placed into it. And AI can't give you that. And so that right there is where I'm reason why I'm having this discussion tonight and today, this morning, whatever the fuck time it is. Having this discussion because a lot of y'all have kids. And it's now time to put instruments back into the hands of our children. And not so they can be the next great musician, because traditionally in our society, it's good to know music even if you're going to be a doctor. It's good to know music if you're going to be whatever, a garbage truck deliverer. Because music, one, when you teach it to the babies at a young age, it teaches them math, teaches them division, quarter note versus a half note versus a 16th note. So on one hand, your children learn applied math because music is math. But on top of that, it opens up a side of their brain of creativity that allows them to tap into universal flow. And so even if you're never going to be a full-time musician, understanding that art is something that you can tap into in other areas of your life. The best doctors out there are also musicians, because when you learn how to be a musician, you learn how to improvise on top of a structured environment. And that's what music teaches. So I'm thinking when I see this big picture, it's sort of forcing an evolution for us to return back home to our roots. What you have to say about that, Sincere?
And that's a great point that you made right there on the tail end. about the other purposes around understanding music and knowing the music and all of that. The other purposes that it serves besides just being a musician. That was a great point right there. But I also was gonna say, don't sleep when you say the AI ain't never gonna be able to get the soul, because you got Negroes in tech too. So it's gonna be a James Brown of programming that comes along one of these days and figure out how to get in between the one and the two.
Yeah,
But
they've already figured that out. You know what I mean? Like, especially some of the stuff that some of these roll-in programs, they they figured out how to take the quantization off and get it. But one thing they can't get, no matter what the programming is, programs can't tap into soul. I don't know. Now maybe if we can get a brother that learn how to program melanin into a computer mix, then we're gonna have a problem.
oh, well listen, they they use melanin to make some of these chips and all of that. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
The melanin is already infused in the technology. You know what I'm saying? We are the technology.
Yeah.
So, it's possible. You know what I mean? I wouldn't write it off. It might be far down the line, but I wouldn't write it off.
Here's
But
the reason.
also,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
want I want I want to touch on something else that you said when you was talking about, how we are that element, that human element, being that, we the original people of the earth. The people who's making the music, we come from the elements of the universe. But also at that time period during the 60s and 70s, the way the music was recorded, you were also, and the way the music was listened to on vinyl and on tape and all of that stuff. These are also natural elements. It's just something that you can't reproduce it with synthetics. You know what I'm saying? The way that we hear the music now is totally different. You know what I'm saying? And the way that the music is recorded is totally different. So everything that the music was laid down on to the way that the music was broadcasted was using universal elements. So it had a whole different feel, like what you're saying. That spirit, that soul was in it.
I want to. I'm glad you brought up that point. Or, sorry, were you done? My bad. Were you done? Because it went out.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm done.
Okay. Okay. I didn't want to cut you off. Huh? Okay. I'm glad you brought up that point, and I'm gonna get to you, be original next. Um, I'm glad you brought up that point because I hear a lot of people talk about how a song's recorded and like the vinyl and the crystal and the needle. And Mr. Bobby Hemming broke that down well. And I think that that's an extremely valid point. And what I'm about to say following this, I'm not. I want to make it very clear to people listening. I'm not refuting that point at all. I'm allowing that point to stand where it is. I'm just going to bring up a point that stands next to that point and offer something for you to consider. Yes, that's true that the how the vinyls work and the magnetism and the melanin within the record itself. Um, but even when I listen to say an Anderson Paak and I listen to him through my AirPod Maxes and Dolby Atmos sound, I still get the feeling. And the reason why I get the feeling is because no matter what means of technology being used, it's humans going into that. And there's something about that in the mixture, in the admixture of humanity is God. Like for those of you who are into the Bible, I'm not, but I used to be. When they say, when the Bible say where two or more agree and bringing anything on earth, so something about Jesus and God and shit helping you out, whatever. That whole bullshit ass scripture. That's true. When two and three people come together, that's where God is. God is in that space, and so no matter so if the way a song is recorded, because it's a lot of music that was recorded on vinyl back in them days that ain't got no damn soul. Hell, listen to the Beatles. The Beatles had crystals in the vinyls in their albums, and that shit ain't had no goddamn soul. The Rolling Stones, oh my god, that's just nostalgic music for people who were around at that time. I dare you to go back and try to listen to a Beatles album 3 times in a row. You're gonna be ready to shoot yourself. You better not have a weapon in your house if you try to listen to a Beatles album. I wanna hold your hand. Hey, get that shit out of here. Um, so even no matter how it's recorded, it still comes down to the humanity that's put in it. And I'm not saying all white musicians don't have soul, because there's plenty of white musicians with soul. Hell, the drummer from Rufus and Shaka Khan was a white boy. That motherfucker was cold. Uh, Paco, the drummer from Sly and the Family Stone, he was white, cold than a motherfucker. I'm not here to say all white people don't have soul. There are white musicians who absolutely do have soul. Um, but what I'm saying is, the way the music, it comes back down to that human element. And as long, the reason why I'm so sure AI could never fuck with human beings is this: because humans program music can't fuck with humans playing music. That's how I draw my conclusion. When I listen to the best music of the '90s and the 2000s, that's produced by the best producers of that day, but they're using a drum machine and an 808, and they made that music for the most part on a computer. You can't put that next to a song recorded in 1976 with live musicians. Hell, you can't put that same song next to, if a live band covered the song. You do a live cover of a lot of those 90s songs and put some real ass musicians on it, and you play that next to the program, the live musicians are gonna blow the program out the water. So the live musicians are gonna blow the program out the water when humans are programming it. AI ain't got a chance. And I'm talking about 100 years from now, because that human element is just something that it's that missing. It's the number zero when you look at numbers. Zero is that space that allows for God to happen. Zero accounts for that emptiness. But what would math be without zero? The 0 point is the human beings that's getting put into it. All this algorithm shit, that's the flowering on top, but it's missing that 0 point, and that's God. But go ahead, be original.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Dwan B, man. You're a beast with this history with this music. I didn't learn a lot. I'm from Flint, Michigan, man. Home ready for the
Sir.
world. And what I wanna I make beats, man, hip hop beats and stuff, but I'm using all the computer stuff. He got me feeling bad and stuff, man, and that's good. But I want to know, what do you feel about, let's say, if I make a beat, but I get musicians to play it, and then record the rap over it and stuff. How you feel about that, or is that cutting out the creative process of other people still?
No, that is a way. Like, one way is jam session. No, that's the way that a lot of your West Coast musicians do it. Like, you're a producer, you have a concept in your mind, so you lay it down. But when you come back, and then a lot of uh, your West Coast stuff, your Death Row Records, a lot of that was done that way, where it may be a beat, but they always had they would, not always, but oftentimes they would have a live band on top of it, and that's fine, because I'm not here to totally shit on technology. Technology has its place, but when you remove the human from it, that can work in an assembly line on a car. You know what I mean? That can work in something, and it can work in music and on some levels. But my thing is, if we want music to be done right, if we want it to the standards, because remember, as Black Americans, we are the standard. No one else can write the standards for us because they can't keep up with us. We are the standard. And the standard for us, the rules that we wrote for ourselves, has always been: you work your craft and you become the best musician you can be. And you put that soul into your music. And so if you're going to program a beat and put a live band on top of it, that's to me, that's where it's at. Because even with a live band, say, let's take Earth and Fire, for instance, my favorite band of all time. One of my favorite bands of all time. Um, your live, they play with stems live. Stems are just now a part of the live show. And for those of you who don't know what stems is just the program beat. Like, when you go to any concert you go to nowadays, there is a drummer there, but underneath the drums, there's a consistent drum beat already playing. So the drummer misses a note, the concert ain't gonna miss a pace, because that's already there. There's a lot of the major keyboard licks, all of the different keyboard licks and things that have to be in the song to make the song rich. All of that stuff is playing underneath the band. The band is locking in with stems. So there is a fusion between programmed music and live sound. As a matter of fact, you get a real richness out of that. DJ Quick is great at that. Um, Programming a song and putting a live drum set on top of it. Hell, on my website, Incense and Ashtray, well, DwannB.com, next week I have live drum sample packs, because there's musicians out there who do program music but you still want that live feel, but you don't have the budget to record a live drummer. So I went into the studio. I have a bunch of sample packs that are available. They're on Swag Sample right now, but they'll be on DwannB.com when I launch that website in the next week or two. And I have Afro beats sample packs. I got funk sample packs. I got soul sample packs, and I got that live feeling. So whenever you do your music and you layer it with that live sound, at least you get that live feeling that gets put into the music. The biggest thing you want to understand as a musician is feeling, 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 feeling is everything. Feeling is what's going to take you from having a song that's hot today to having a song that's hot 50 years from now. That all comes from the feeling, and that's something that we as Black people, these folks, they've influenced us to get away from it. I think this AI is forcing us to get back to that, and it's just causing us to step our game up. But that's who we are as a people. We are step our game up, though. You know what I mean? So,
I'll respond to Be Original, what Be
go ahead.
Original said too. Yeah, like I said earlier, I'm a hip hop artist too. Me and my brother DJ RP Beats, we master elements. He's the producer, DJ, I'm the MC. And his weapon of choice is the MPC. You know what I'm saying? But if you listen to our latest project, it's a lot of live instruments incorporated into it. Like we literally was going online finding musicians all around the world, using Fiverr and all type of stuff, finding musicians from all around the world, and just giving them our idea and our concept that we already laid out with the technology, and having them come and add layers to it and add elements to it to give it more feeling, like what DwannB is talking about. And so, to me, the best hip hop always has a blend. It's always a fusion. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you were watching the Wu-Tang show, but there was a scene when the RZA was in the music store. He was buying some instruments and some equipment and stuff like that. And there was a dude in there. I guess he was a guitar player or something. And he was kind of looking at RZA like, you ain't no real musician. What you gonna do with that? You know what I'm saying? And RZA was like, well, I probably can't play it, but I could get somebody to come in and play it. You know what I'm saying? I got sounds in my head. I can't play the actual musician, but the sound I got in my head, I could get somebody to come in and play that position for me. And so RZA is still a musician.
Hey,
You know what I'm saying?
I don't even want to cut you off. You just spurred the thought, my brother. That's how Barry White got down. Barry White couldn't chart out an orchestra. Barry White had the sound. He knew he wanted, when he did Love Scenes, he knew he wanted to go. So what he did was he hired a man named Gene Page. And before he worked with Gene Page, he worked with my wife's father, Mr. James Carmichael, at Mirwood Records out here in LA in the late 1960s. And Mr. Carmichael was an arranger, still alive, but stopped doing music a long time ago. But Mr. Carmichael went to a conservatory, and he learned how to chart out music. And if you ask me, his string and horn arrangements are up there with Mozart and Beethoven. Every time I tell him that, he'd be like, nah. I'm like, look, bruh, you wrote that horn arrangement for Dancing Machine. So how they did it was when he was at Motown, and also when he worked with Barry White, sometimes you had your composers, I mean, some of your producers, they don't play those instruments. They don't play those sounds, but they know the sound and the feeling that they want. So they go to the person that can pull off that sound. So even when you go back to the 60s, at the time that music was recorded right in the 70s, them people didn't know, like, they couldn't write no damn horn arrangement. So I'm going to call in Charles Stepney, Earth and Fire. I'm calling Charles Stepney out of Chicago and bring him to handle my horn arrangements and a lot of my different parts. And then we're going to get a vocal coach over here who can bring in singers who can sing these notes. I can't sing these notes. Hell, I can't tell these singers what to sing. But I'm going to hire James Carmichael, Gene Page. I'm going to hire Leon Ware. I'm going to hire Paul Reiser, and they're going to write these arrangements for me, and I'm just going to hum them out. And all of those great Barry White orchestral arrangements that he did throughout the 70s, it was a man named Gene Page. Barry White would go to him and say, I got this sound, I got that sound, and he would hum it out. And then Gene Page would be like, okay, I'm gonna write this part in for the oboe, I'm gonna write this part in for violins, I'm gonna write that part in for trumpet, that part in for the orchestra. and Gene Page would compose the music. And then Barry White, when he came to when we get on Soul Train, when he would get on TV, he was the maestro. He sit up there conducting the orchestra as part of the show, when really the sound of the music was an idea in his mind. He's not the person that executed the sound. He hired somebody who could. And again, that goes back to the point. I'm glad you brought that up, Sincere. That goes back to the point about music being a community. Since the 90s and since the 80s, it's become this ego thing that, look what I did. It's never been about that. The great Count Basie, to me, my favorite all-time composer, Count Basie, he took a chance on Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones was just a trumpet player. But Count Basie heard a little something in the way Quincy talked music. And he said, okay, write some arrangements for me. Mind you, Count Basie, that's music god. Like most of our generation don't know who Count Basie is. But if I were to equate Count Basie, I can't even equate him to anybody of today, because he was if better if you combine Dr. Dre with Pharrell with Kanye. That's Count Basie. So as great as Count Basie is, he took a chance on this young man named Quincy Jones who had ideas. And when you listen to a lot of that Frank Sinatra, "Fly Me to the Moon," um, uh, more than the greatest love the world has known. That's my shit. That's Quincy Jones, nigga. And then Basie's orchestra carried off the sound. And the same thing when you get up. That's why I hear a lot of hip hoppers talk shit about Dr. Dre. And I'll be like, man, leave Dr. Dre alone. Dr. Dre ain't doing nothing, and all fucking producers do. You produce everything when you're young, but as you get older, you you hire people to produce the music and you refine the music. That's all Quincy Jones did. Quincy Jones didn't compose those everything on those Michael Jackson songs. No, he hired Tom Washington to arrange horns, and Tom also arranged for Earth, Wind and Fire after Stephanie died. A lot of those late '70s Earth, Wind and Fire horn licks was by Tom, and so Quincy Jones hired Tom to write those Michael Jackson horn licks. He hired Paul Reiser, the same guy who, when you listen to a lot of that Luther Vandross music of the '80s with those great, beautiful, lush string arrangements. When you listen to Tina Marie Portuguese Love and those string arrangements, when you listen to all that, that's Paul Reiser. That's who Quincy Jones hired to do the string arrangements for Off the Wall. Then he turned around and said, okay, I'm going to bring in Greg Fillinganes and Joe Sample. Greg Fillinganes is somebody who composes music. He knows how to structure music. And he brought all of these parts that did different jobs well, because Quincy Jones doesn't need to compose the music. He composed the music when he was up and coming, working for Count Basie. After you've been in the game for a while, you're not going to compose every little song. You're going to hire those who got the sound of the day, and then you're going to put the bells and whistles and the seasoning and the salt and the pepper on the music to make it a hit. But it seems as if Dr. Dre is the only person penalized for that, when that's what all producers have always done. When you're in the game, man, you've been in the game for a long time. So, because music is a communal effort, and that's something I think that along the way, especially as it got into hip hop, we forgot that as a people. So when I see somebody like the RZA going around hiring, when he said what he had to say, I'm going to hire somebody that can do it. That's just the way to do it. Duke Ellington had Billy Strayhorn compose everything. And watch, I guarantee y'all one day they're gonna come out with a Duke Ellington documentary, and all they're gonna talk about is Billy Strayhorn, because Billy Strayhorn was gay. Guarantee you, if they talk about Count Basie, they're gonna turn that whole story into an LGBTQ story because of his composer Billy Strayhorn. Watch, that's just coming. I guarantee you. Check in with me in the next 3 years. But go ahead, Sincere, or if it's somebody else that wants to speak, let me raise your hand.
Nah, I'm getting ready to cut, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate you letting me up, man. I appreciate you letting me speak, man. It's definitely good build. You always dropping good games, especially when it comes to this music thing. Just keep doing what you do, man. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir, man. You have a good one. Yeah. So, but that's the thing when it comes down to it. When it comes to our music, that our music is really something that that really there is no technology that can stay ahead of us. So I don't see AI as a threat because there are young musicians out there that have a sound, they have a groove, they have a feeling that AI can never outpace. And the way I look at it, this is just gonna take us back to jazz. And all jazz is live improvisational black music. You know, where like Miles Davis, he never used to study. He never used to rehearse. He said, "How can you rehearse a moment? Just get up on that stage and create the moment." And that's something that AI will not be able to do. It won't be able to create these moments. It won't be able to. Um, it won't be able to give us that element, that live that live improvisational element, that feeling that makes music special, that connects us all to our music. So when y'all see this AI stuff doing what it's doing, man, don't even trip. It's like it's just going to take off for me. Now, if you're Rihanna, if you're The Weeknd, if you're Lil Nas X, and you these people who don't really have the soul, be threatened. Be very threatened, because this is about to take you niggas out. There's no need for them kind of musicians anymore with AI, and I'm all here for it. Because I'm tired of watching people imitating culture vulture off of our music, and then get treated, and you see people like their faces next to Diana Ross's face, next to Gladys Knight's face. They put these artists of today, they put these cats in the same category as the Temptations and Marvin Gaye, and it's just so unfair. And so now with this AI coming out, it's about to take them kind of artists out, and it's gonna cause a need for a rebirth of the actual talented musician that feeds our soul the way our soul needs to be fed. So that's all I wanted to say. I didn't want to be here all goddamn day because, again, I got the heater repair people coming by, so I got to get off this damn thing and open up my phone line so I don't miss my appointment. It's cold to the motherfucker here in LA, and I don't want to hear y'all people who ain't from LA complaining. Yes, it's in the 50s, but that's cold. I need my heater. I don't pay all this goddamn rent to I don't pay this goddamn rent to live in a cold ass climate. So yeah. But this will be back up on my YouTube channel. And also for those of you listening, I'm doing my incense and ashtrays later on today. We are going to dedicate tonight's show to Herbie Hancock. And that's what tonight comes down to. Tonight we are going to be talking about Herbie Hancock. Because Herbie Hancock, he is he's been at the forefront of so many evolutions in our music. See, Herbie Hancock started in the 60s under Miles Davis before he did his first album, Maiden Voyage. And that's how we're going to start tonight's show with Herbie's first release, one of my favorite songs he's ever done, Maiden Voyage, with all acoustic instruments. And I'm going to show you how Herbie Hancock is at the forefront as music evolved technologically. He was the musician that was pegged and chose to be be the first person to record on a lot of the instruments that were advancements in technology. And so we're going to talk about how Herbie Hancock advanced music both sonically and technologically. You know, the first time that a Rhodes was used in jazz, a Rhodes keyboard, was in 1969 when they recorded Bitches Brew from Miles Davis. That was the first time an electric piano was used in jazz. And who was on that piano? Herbie Hancock. Um, when it comes down to it, when it comes to the talk box, everyone knows the talk box by Roger Troutman, Zappin' Roger. Well, a couple years before Zappin' Roger came out, Herbie Hancock did a whole album. There's a song called Sunlight. Look that up. That's my favorite song on the album. Um, and then in the album, you hear Herbie Hancock using the talk box 2 years before Roger Troutman came out. He was at the forefront of that. And Herbie was at the forefront of legitimizing hip hop. Understand this. Rap music was a marginalized music, not taken serious by musicians at all. not taken serious by the media, not taken serious by anyone outside of Generation X. When Herbie Hancock dropped Rocket, not only was that the top song in that category for a long time, what it did was it shut up all of the musicians that were shitting on rap music and shitting on this new sound called scratching, this new sound that wasn't considered real music. When Herbie Hancock releases an album with that sound, that tells everyone else to sit your punk ass down. That's the OG. That would be the equivalent to if something happened today, and just say our generation, older millennials and Gen X, was shitting on a new sound. Just say there's a new sound. Say, for instance, mumble rap. Let's use mumble rap as an example when it came out, when it was new. Say, when mumble rap came out and everyone was talking about it and talking about how it ain't no lyrics. If somebody like Rakim or Jay-Z or a legend that everyone respects came out and did a song in mumble rap, what that would have done was tell everyone else who's trying to be big boy about it to stand down. What can you say? If they did it, who are you to say is bad? No one. Thank God, no one ever did that with mumble rap. But but that would be the that's the that's the ledge that Herbie Hancock put himself out on when he recorded Rocket. We look back at Rocket now like, man, of course. No, that was that song came at a major musical risk. So we have a man in Herbie Hancock who's now 80, who turned 83 years old 2 days ago, and he's still alive. And when I saw his birthday, I didn't see too many people in hip hop salute him and say happy birthday. I didn't see too many hip hop fans. That's what I mean by hip hop has to know where it comes from, because the reason why all these immigrants and all these other groups can lay claim to our shit is because we don't hold our legends in esteem. We just they do something great for us, and it's just kind of like, oh well. And then when we don't do that, when we don't celebrate our heroes are out there left to dry. And then what happens is these Mexicans, these Europeans, they pay top dollar to bring our heroes out to do music in their countries. Their universities pay top dollar to bring. When we're done, that person is a has been, or that person ain't done nothing lately, they're the ones going to the concert, turning their children on to the music, and that's why Mexicans are so into our old music. It's no way. We as black folks should be a goddamn shame that Mexican kids know more about 70s soul than black kids. We should be ashamed. Then we'll turn around and say they still in our shit when we don't pass that music down, and these other races do and cultures do. And then you'll see these older black musicians catering to these other groups and cultures, and then we'll be like, man, they selling out. No, nigga, they ain't selling out. They just going to where they loved. It's only human to go to where you love. That's why our babies and our children join gangs. Our children ain't joining gangs to be disruptive and to fuck up the world. Our children that join gangs, they're joining a place of love. They're joining a place that they're accepted. They're going somewhere to where they're not judged. You know what I mean? That's what they're doing. They're going to the love. Hold on, let me turn my mic. Let me see here. There we go. All right, cool. Can y'all hear me? I have to turn my Bluetooth on. They're going towards the love. And that's what our musicians are doing. Our classic musicians, they're going towards where they're loved. And if we ain't gonna show them the love, they're gonna go to the people who will show them love. And so instead of me bitching and moaning and complaining about it, I try to hold these Twitter spaces the way to raise awareness. And I try to do shows and programming. I don't care about popularity numbers and all that shit. Y'all know, y'all see me. I'm quick to talk about somebody that I know niggas don't know about. And when I can easily post a song I'm listening to, or an artist that I like, that's popular, that can get me more in the algorithm of what I talk about, But it's not about that. To me, it really is about showing love and appreciation for those of us who got us there, especially the ones that are still alive. Because, like they say, people who don't reference their heroes will no longer have heroes. And now look what's happening in music. We got all them goddamn. Oh, B Zilla, you here? I was about to leave, but B Zilla here. You want to speak? Or Raheem Shabazz, I see you over here too. B Zilla, if you can speak, I want to hear. I want to hear your point of view. I'm glad you came up here before I get up out of here because I definitely want to hear what you got to say about this. Um, we as a people, we have to, we look what's happening. We have all of these heroes out here that have done so much great for us. We don't reverence them. We haven't reverenced them. And now all we complaining about is these immigrants that have taken over our music. Well, if you ask me, that's a consequence of a group of people that doesn't celebrate as heroes. Because if you don't celebrate those heroes and the ones who got you there, and if the only thing you can say is, man, they ain't doing nothing relevant since the 90s. If that's all you got to say, then all right, cool, touche. Here's, that's all you got to say? Okay, here's Lil Nas X. You don't appreciate X Clan because X Clan didn't sell 10 million albums. All right, cool. Here goes uh here goes Soldier Boy then. Oh, you don't respect Too Short because Too Short don't come from New York. Too Short only comes from Too Short is from the West Coast and Too Short didn't sell that many albums and he doesn't cross over. Oh, you're not gonna respect the guy Too Short? All right, cool. Here's some bussified rapper that's gonna be talking about sucking dick and rhyming at the same time. There you go. That's the environment that we create when we don't celebrate our heroes. I got Raheem and then Beat Zilla.
Peace and Black Power family, peace and reparations. I didn't plan on speaking, but you called my name, so I'm just gonna chime in for a few. I definitely agree with what you're saying in regards to music and how we gotta uphold it because it's part of our legacy, number one, right? And if we don't claim it, then you're going to have others who co-opt our music. And we are quick to say that music is therapeutic to our soul, right? And music is soulful. So why have other people take our soul from us? We got to look at music on that type of level. Music is deep, you know what I mean? And a lot of times when me as a music journalist, I used to interview a lot of artists. And what I used to find out with many of the artists, in fact, mostly every last one of them, music was the saving grace, that got them out of the street. Music was the saving grace that helped them to put them in a financial position where they was able to take care of their family. More black individuals are multimillionaires due to music, whether they was an artist or they worked behind the scene in some type of capacity in the entertainment industry. So we got to hold on to our music, and music tells our story. 100 years from now, they'll be playing songs where people will know about the struggle of foundation Black Americans. Um, and in closing, to answer your question, and the topic is AI music a threat to music or saving grace? Um, it's just like the internet. It's a gift and a curse. Um, if AI is going to be used to probably make music, I'm talking about the instrumental of it, yeah, maybe. But to mimic artists and to use artificial intelligence to mimic a person's voice, yeah, I'm not too fond of that. Nah, I like some things just got to be authentic. You just got to leave it alone. And I don't think that AI can give us that soulful music that many of us music lovers long for. And with that, man, I'm gonna say peace and Black Power and Dwan. I'm gonna see you in Dallas, and I'm definitely gonna come through and check out your comedy show. Peace.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. Thank you, man. Thanks for that knowledge you just dropped in. Y'all need to go ahead and check out Raheem Shabazz's Elementary Genocide. I'm glad I got to tell you this in person when I met you. But bruh, like I said, that movie helped save my mental sanity because I was working with kids at the time, and I saw Elementary Genocide around the same time I saw Hidden Colors 3. And those two movies let me know that, all right, what I was dealing with at work every day, running up against the school system, I thought I was going crazy because I'm out here trying to play Captain Save these black kids, and I kept running against the system, and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And when I saw that movie, Elementary Genocide, it broke. I was like, this brother, has he been working at my job these last? Matter of fact, was he with me when I was going through school? Because I went through the same shit. But it brought clarity to what I was seeing and what I was going through. And because of the clarity your movie brought to me, and because of the clarity Hidden Colors brought to me, I was able to create my company, Breakthrough Advocacy Services. And then instead of being frustrated every night when I got home from work, I understood what the IEP process was. And I was able to create a company that saved children from the special ed school system. But I was only able to get there once I identified who the enemy was and what the problem was. And it was Raheem's movie that helped me identify what the problem was to create a solution. Hell, I just had an IEP this past Friday. I'm still out there getting these kids up out of these non-public school systems because of the information that he dropped in his film. So I want y'all to check that out and and for all the children I worked with all these years when I worked with kids, Elementary Genocide was always homework. Elementary Genocide in the Hidden Color series was a homework assignment. It still is a homework assignment to any family I've ever had to work with out here on these streets. So y'all make sure y'all check his shit out if you ain't checked it out already. All right. Go ahead, Beatzilla.
Hey, what's going on, my brother? Good man. Thank you for having this space. And I'll just make this quick because I don't have long. I'm just hopping in here real quick. Shout out to you, brother, for even getting on this subject and holding these spaces. So the question is AI music a threat to music or a saving grace? It definitely is not a saving grace. And as far as like when it goes down to just creation of music, as a musician, I don't even understand. Like AI would always need something to mimic it. I don't think the creative process of making something innovative, because even going back to our like techno music and like house music, all of those electronica, for instance, that's still done by human beings using sounds. I don't think that the creation of especially funk, soul, gospel, R&B, hip hop, and like, I don't think it could create that. But the mimicking tool of it, that is kind of where you come into play. Because remember that AI rapper that we had not too long ago, that just recently, that we had that was kind of the one of those first little things they were throwing out there to kind of let you know what type of wave they was coming with. And it was corny and whack because at the end of the day, there's still non us behind it. So like, although it's artificial intelligence, it's still helmed by the dominant society. So as far as the creation of like soul, funk, and anything with a feel, I don't think AI would be able to actually get there. I just really don't see it. However, I do see it creating enough of a viable product for the machine to use as a smokescreen or a blanket to get real music out the paint. So I
Hey,
do see that.
I want you to answer. I appreciate the answer, y'all. And I will. And if Ra, you sit around, you want to speak on it. I think both of you guys sort of came in after I laid out my case, so I want you to answer the question from this context. All right. When I was the point of view, what I'm saying is it a saving grace? Here's my angle on that, and I want you guys' opinion on that on this angle. The angle I'm coming from on that is AI cannot replace. Like music has gone since the '90s, really since the '80s. It's gone so far in the direction of programming, where by the time you got to the 2000s, everything like song like Laffy, let's say a song like Laffy Taffy. I knew music was done when doom 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 doom. When that dropped and that was a hit the way it was, I knew music was done. But as a musician, I'm like, this is what it takes. I'll never forget. I was in Atlanta, 2005, December, when I first heard that. I was in some damn club in Atlanta off Peachtree in this wood. It looked like a 2 or 3 story, but it was like a wood building. And I remember because the floor was shaking, and it was this herd of bison. These 4 chicks that was like bigger than me in a corner over there, and they was dancing at the same time. And I was like, God damn, is this a stampede? But when that when that dropped and it hit the way it hit, I was like, this shit sounds. This is before AI music was around. I was thinking this shit sounds like some goddamn artificial intelligence. What is this? I get it. It sounds good. It's groove. It has a feeling to it. It makes you want to dance in a certain way. But for people to be falling over it the way it is, man, our music has truly devolved. So music has been devolving to the point to where the Rihanna Super Bowl performance was acceptable. She didn't sing, she didn't dance. She literally went up and down on an elevator, singing a whole bunch of music of notes she never hit in that studio, notes that were auto-tuned in. They weren't even hard notes to hit, but she still didn't hit them. You can hear the auto-tune in the recording if you know what you're listening for. You know what I mean? The electronic behind it. And this is now worth 20 Grammys and a Super Bowl performance. Like, so we have been, over the last 20 years, basically having humans doing AI music. Program, repetitive, not even having to hit the note bullshit. So my point of view is AI, since the music has already been AI style the last 20 years, no human is going to out AI AI. AI is going to out human these pre-programmed sample beats coming from singers who aren't even singing, and they're sort of just talking into a mic and the computer's doing the rest. Well, from my point of view, AI is going to do that better than any human. So the consequence to that is going to be to force anybody who's doing music now to actually have to pick up some sort of an instrument and learn music. Because the only people who are going to stay ahead of AI are the people who know how to create music from scratch. Because all of this prefab music, AI is going to prefab music better than any human can ever prefab music. The same way AI cybersecurity is going to kick out human cybersecurity. It's a program. So is this new thing with AI? Is the consequence and the fallout from it? Is that the saving grace to me? I want to hear your opinion on that.
Okay. Yeah, real quick, because I got to run. Okay. Yes. Yes and no. Again, with the second part of my answer in the first place, how it could be used to kind of bombard other artists, because I know how it would be used to target Black artists and the Black music form. So they would be trying their damnedest, because they already know that's where the creation starts. So that's the curse part. However, the gift, it would wipe out a ton of these on paper artists that are made up in a boardroom somewhere in the label, and this is what they've decided to put out to the masses for whatever reason. So yeah, it would make all of that pretty much null and void, and that would go away overnight. Because trust me, if the labels could figure out that they could use AI instead of these pre-programmed artists, oh man, it's a wrap. So yeah, it's a gift and a curse. That's pretty much how I look at it. That's my take on it. But I gotta run, my brother. But again, thank you for having this space, and peace to all of y'all in the room. Shout out to my brother right here, and let's keep rolling. Peace.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Raheem.
Peace, brother. Now that you gave your spill, I'm definitely gonna have to say, it's not a saving grace. That is definitely gonna be destructive to what we know music to be, And the reason why I say that is because it's going to be prepackaged music already that has no soul to it. You know, I don't know if people seen recently they had Kanye West, his cadence and his vocals um rap somebody else's song. You know what I mean? And it sounded 100% exactly like Kanye West. And like the other brother was saying, you know, record companies can make these AI avatars and pretty much be the owner of the avatar and pay themselves mechanical royalties and residuals as opposed to doing it and paying the individual. Um, and it will be something to the effect of how some people still like analog over digital, you know. And when it gets to that point, man, I think many of us is gonna dig out those old techniques, turntables, and start going back to vinyl.
And
And
that's
I land my plane.
and what you just hit on at the end is what I was thinking. That's the consequence of what they're doing. The consequence is causing us to go back to what worked before. And I'm gonna get to the next speaker after I make this point. But thank you for that, Raheem. Appreciate that. Well, this is what I let's go back and let me give me a few minutes to talk about us historically in our innovation. If you go back and look, music stopped really evolving as you get to the late 70s. As you get into the 80s, the late 70s, early 80s is where music plateaued. And then from there, as you get into the 90s, it just started to go back and back. It didn't really get pushed forward. Only thing that became new was the technology, not necessarily what was in the music. Everything went back to the 70s. And it still goes back to the 70s. And when I do my instance and ashtrays tonight later on, I'm going to, so follow me on Mixcloud for those of you who want to get my music breakdowns that have music involved. Mixcloud.com/DwannB. If somebody can put it up in my account, somebody can put it up in the Jumbotron or whatever. But our music, when we go back to recorded music history, we started putting our music on wax in the 1920s, really abundantly in the 1920s. Our music usually evolves in 3-4 year spurts. Every 3-4 years, we pump out a new sound, a new feeling. And we still pump out new sounds, but not to the level we used to pump out new sounds. You know, you get the jazz when Louis Armstrong, before Louis Armstrong, you had ragtime in the early 1900s, and you had the Buddy Bolden sound of jazz in 1906, 1908, and the Jelly Roll Morton sound in the 1910s. But then there's a man named Louis Armstrong that came around in the 1920s, and he really laid the foundation for how music was going to go and how it's still going 100 years later after he laid the foundation down. Through his trumpet and through his vocals, he laid down basically what the stew and the foundation of what would later become American popular music. And then came along a man named Fats Waller on the piano, and he brought in the Louis Armstrong sound to that stride piano. And his style of jazz, when later fused with blues, became what we now then knew as rock and roll. Rock and roll started to become a thing in the early 50s into the mid 50s, and R&B started to become a thing in the mid 50s, really based in Los Angeles. We're going to do a whole breakdown on the Los Angeles connection between R&B and music, because R&B was the hotbed where the majority of R&B record labels was recorded and done here in LA in the 1950s. I'm saying that to say this: every 4 or 5 years, there's something new, a whole new sound. And then you get to the 60s, it's the Motown sound. The Motown sound started dying out. Then you get this thing called rock and roll through Jimi Hendrix in 1966. At the same time, in 1966, you get this man named James Brown laying down something called funk. And then when you get to 1973, you get this thing called disco. And in jazz, you evolve from swing to bebop to from swing to bop to bebop to to hard bop to fusion, all in a 15-year span. And the blues is evolving, and our music is ever evolving. The sounds are getting more lush, more layered. When you get to the 70s, you get R&B, 70s R&B. So that's really a mesh of all the other sounds. It's the blues, it's doo-wop, it's jazz, it's all of that meshed into one sound. It's orchestral, it's classical with the string arrangements. All of that is less, and all this evolving happened when Black people were still, when we owned our record labels, when we had our own radio stations during the times of segregation, where we would have at least one station that was dedicated to our music, where we would have at least one Black-owned record label, and our underground economy funded the music the same way the white underground economy funded Frank Sinatra. Our underground economy created Motown, the same way Freeway Rick Ross funded Anita Baker's demos. You don't get Anita Baker without the streets. It's like you don't get hip hop without the streets. It's like you don't get jazz without the streets. The streets funded all this shit. Jelly Roll Morton was a pimp. When Jelly Roll Morton left New Orleans and came to LA, he had a brothel upstairs that he pimped out of. And he played his music downstairs at night. And if you're in LA, you can go to Central Avenue and 11th Street to see that brothel / jazz joint that Jelly Roll Morton had. So pimping and street shit was always a part of our life. It was always a part of our music. Why am I saying all this? We always had this ever-evolving culture in our music that when those folks took over our music and started owning the record labels in the 80s and started controlling the sound in the 80s, the evolution stopped. The saving grace for us is we had this thing called hip-hop that evolved. And out of hip-hop, out of the evolvement of hip-hop, that was something that they couldn't control, because hip-hop was something that was controlled. We owned Def Jam. So they got our R&B and stifled R&B in the 80s. But hip-hop, we still controlled it up into the early 90s. And we kept evolving our music. Now they've successfully bought out everything hip-hop. And so if you notice, the evolution of our music stopped. It's like you have Drake around for all this time. Drake is not that good to be relevant this long. I like Beyonce, but she's not that good to be relevant this long. Rihanna definitely ain't that good to be relevant this long. Usher. They all made good music. I'm not saying they didn't make good music, but none of their music was so chart-topping and eye-popping that they're still relevant this long. There's a controlling force that has stopped the evolution of our music. Because how do we have this pattern of behavior over a 70-year period? But every time this pattern of behavior is disrupted, it's when these other people come and take control of what we have going on. That's just paying attention to your environment. That's just being your own cultural anthropologist. Look at it. Every time the evolution of our music stops, whose hands are involved? So the difference is between our generation, we can talk shit about old generations all we want. The difference between our generation and those generations is, for some reason, you listen to hip-hop people talk all the time when they talk about their top 5, especially if you listen to a Jay-Z fan talk. Listen to a Jay-Z fan. He sold 200 million albums, and he brought this many Grammys. Since when the fuck do we care about how many albums somebody sold and how many Grammys they got? We inherently know if a person sold a whole bunch of albums and got a bunch of Grammys, that automatically probably made them corny. Because anytime those folks, except our folks, we know something's in the stew that ain't right. Something corny about it. But it's something that my generation, the millennials, and a lot of Generation X forgot about. And a lot of us bought into this whole popularity bullshit. So we get these artists who are good. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm not hating on none of them. But are they that good? Is Drake really that good to still be relevant around this long? Or is his competition being stifled? Is Rihanna that good to sell that many artists, that many albums? Or the people who generate good R&B, are they being muted, stifled, sat on? Is evolution being stopped by a hidden force? That's a question I want you to ask yourself. Because again, how does a people who evolve music and create? That's what my Black American music family tree is about. Go look at the tree. When I get to the point to where it sprouts out and you see all of these genres sprout out, All of that happened between 1930 and 1973 in a 50-year period. All of that, what are you talking about? Heavy metal, rock and roll, uh, uh, zydeco, R&B, jazz, funk, hip hop, soul, neo soul, techno, EDM. All of this shit happens within a 50-year period. How the fuck did it stop? And who are these motherfuckers who've been on the top 10 charts for 10 years? Who are they? Who sent them? What's going on with our music? And the reason why, again, I pose this question is the way I see it, all of this bullshit program music that we've been force fed over the last 20 years, the people who's been giving us this sound, they, for the most part, wrote their own check up out of this industry. I hope they save their money because they're about to be replaced by artificial intelligence. And the only people who are going to stay ahead of the curve are the actual live musicians who know how to tap into that melanin rich source that we pull our music from. We pull our music from God. That's because we are the God of this planet. And that's where our music comes from. That element, the 0 point. The 0 point is who we are when it comes to music. Like I said before, in the funk, in our music is never on time. It's always late. When I as a drummer, when I want to make black people dance, I can't hit that snare on 2 and the 4. I better wait. Because if I hit that shit right on 2, you're going to look at me like, what the fuck is wrong with this nigga? That's why if you notice black people, when we listen to white people music, Miley Cyrus, that music sounds like it's jumping around on a pogo stick. That's because for popular white music, and Little Richard understood this, you got to play on the beat for these other people. You got to bounce it down because they can't really dance. They can't move. So everything got to be on time. Everything got to be on point. Because all they want to do is bounce up and down because they can't do shit else. Black people, we groove between the beats. So our music has this delay. It has this feeling, and it's all feeling. It's a feeling. It's never on time. You go back and try to time out a Parliament Funkadelic song and try to put it to a metronome. They all over the goddamn place. When you go listen to Needy, it start out at 108 beats a minute, it slow down to 99 beats a minute, it jumps back up to 104 beats a minute, and it settles back down around about 106 beats a minute. There's this thing, this element within our music that makes it special, that keeps it something that you can't predict and you can't control. But that's an element that we've forgotten over the last 20 or 30 years in our music. That I think my assumption, my prediction is AI is going to force us to tap back into that source. But go ahead, Goddess.
Yeah, I just want to made the point that I think it was Beatzilla that made the point, and he was saying that he didn't agree with the fact that AI could actually start singing, and that's what you're going to be listening to. Like, you're not going to be actually listening to an artist, you're going to be listening to AI. I look at a lot of stuff. I look at movies, I look at anime, and not to say it's a viable source, but things that I watch always, they get me thinking, and I don't put anything past anything or anybody. So nothing comes, I guess, as a shock because I play all kind of scenarios. So there was this series, anime series that came on Netflix called Carol and Tuesday, and it basically was about music. It was about, these two chicks that came together that were from different backgrounds or whatever, and they kind of got together. Well, in doing that, they had this little competition that they got in on, I guess similar to American Idol and something like that. But in that series, they actually had this chick. She was um I can't remember exactly what she was or how it played out, but she was they were pushing her to be this, top artist. They were saying,
Oh, is that me or is that she? Can y'all hear me? Because she just got the Matrix got her. I think. If y'all can hear me, hit one of y'all emojis and some shit. Y'all can hear me. Can y'all hear me? Okay, cool. You can hear me. All right, cool. All right. I guess the Matrix got her. If she comes back in, I'll let her up. Man, I think she's back. I want to go back and listen. I don't know about that show. I want to go back and watch that show she's talking about, because I do know that them folks, they tell us what they're doing through the TV shows. That's how, in their minds, they avoid karma. Is they tell you what they're gonna do, and they tell us the messages of what they're gonna do through TV, and usually through cartoons and superhero films. That's why I've never really been into like X-Men or none of that shit. I never give a fuck about Marvel or DC, but I watch Marvel and DC because Marvel shows you what the high side of your powers, and DC shows you the dark side of your powers and the things that are available to you to use if you know how to watch these movies with the right eye. But that's a whole nother topic. Um, but but she brought up a point about music, and I'm glad she brought it up about the AI singing. The way I look at it is, if you are a Rihanna style singer, what's up, Afro Elite? If you are these non FBA tether style artists, and I'm not saying all non FBA artists are tethers, because Maxwell is in the FBA, but Maxwell, he does our music right. So I'm not here to say, because Tom Bell was not FBA, but he was one of the greatest arrangers of all time for the Philly sound. So I'm not here to draw any division between my Black American brothers across the diaspora. Just pointing out there is a distinct difference in style between the Black American and everyone else, and that's just us standing up for our culture. Because look, we created it. People from other parts of the world, they have a sound that mimics their environment, and that's fine. But this conversation is about the Black American sound, and no one delivers our sound on the level we deliver it. And we are the sound of the world. We're the sound of Earth. And that's not because we force it upon anyone. It's because when other groups and other cultures listen to our music, they ditch their cultural traditional music and adapt ours. That's the point of view I speak from. So if there's any new people who listen to me and you're saying Dwann's been xenophobic, or Dwwan is saying Black Americans are better than everyone else, no. I am being my own cultural anthropologist, and you can be one too. And you be your own cultural anthropologist by observing culture, and you ask yourself, what is the cause and effect relationship between the behaviors that I'm seeing? And when I look around the world, I see these groups of people who have a traditional music that is of their own, with their own instrumentation. If you're in the islands, if you're from Trinidad, it's the steel drums that was adopted by Jamaica. And if you're from the Latin sound, it's timbales and cowbells and hand drums. That was the sound that you had. We created the drum set minding our own Black ass business. You know, we decided how we play the horn and how we sing our music, minding our own Black ass business. Now, we didn't have the internet in the 1930s and 40s when we were creating the sound. Hell, we didn't have no damn TVs in the house to know what the hell was going on y'all sides of the world. We was doing this shit minding our own Black ass business at church, trying. But we got a revival coming up next month, and we better sound better than First Mount Bethany Baptist Church. Every year, Saint Mount Bethany Missionary Gospel Church, they win the choir competition every year. We're gonna kick their ass this year. That's how our music got good. Minded our own Black ass business. And what happens is, when other groups and other cultures hear our music, they ditch the steel drums. You don't hear Busta Rhymes playing no. He ain't playing none of that island music in his raps. P-Rock ain't producing no music with timbales and cowbells and all kind of all that shit they be saying in their language that we don't understand. You know, they ditch all that shit and start sounding and dancing like us. That is the cultural anthropological proof of cultural dominance that we have. We just don't see it that way because we're taught to see it through the eyes of the white supremacists. But if we see it through our own eyes, that shows our cultural dominance on the world and our cultural impression of the world. That they ditch what they did. All they got to do is hear us one time. Now they want to be us. That's what they told us by their actions. So that's the point of view that I speak from. So I said all that to say this. When it comes to the music and when it comes to these AIs, these AI artists, these AI music, the people who program that don't have the sauce. All right? The people who program that don't have the sauce to put in to the program. And say we were the ones who programmed the AI. The AI don't have the sauce to take on the next element. And that's the element of the 0 point. That's the element of, that's the feeling. That's the emotion, the thing you can't measure with a tool, but you can feel its presence. We all feel the presence of 0. We all feel it. It's there. It's all around us every day we go outside. Every time we breathe, we feel that 0 point. We feel God. Every time we there's that feeling, that emotion, that energy. And that's what makes the music. That's what makes soul music. Now, and the way I look at it, they've been planning this AI shit for over 30 years. You can hear it in the music. Just go back and listen to your favorite R&B song from the 90s. And I love Toni Braxton. To me, she's a legend. She's a god. But there's something that's missing in the songs. When you compare with Toni Braxton, the music production, the level of music, that feeling, there's something missing that was in Aretha Franklin and Shaka Khan's careers. There's a certain sauce that's missing. The production is great in the face. That whole Toni Braxton's whole first album, her vocals are great, the production's great, the music sounds good, it feels good. But because it doesn't have that live musician, that live element that's there, there's a certain element in the sauce that's missing. That was there if that same song was recorded in a different environment, like let's say Anita Baker for an example. Anita Baker, she never allowed the industry to dictate her sound. So when you listen to Anita Baker's music in the 86, 87, 88, she stayed with the live musicians. She kept that sauce. So her music lasted through the 80s. It's a lot of great music that was done in the 80s that didn't make it past the 80s because the 80s is when they changed the sauce. It's a lot of good, and people who listen to me regularly know the example I always use is Howard Hewitt. Howard Hewitt made a lot of good music in the 80s. But the sauce in Howard Hewitt's music was 80s. 80s instrumentation, these new weird kind of sonic sounds that sounded good were made for a hot album in 1986. Girl, I'm for real, all that shit. Or when Kool and the Gang did that, Joanna, I love you. Yeah, Joanna was one of their biggest hits. But don't nobody want to hear no fucking Joanna. That song was fucking corny. And 80s and weird, with them weird ass 80s sounds. But if Kool and the Gang want to play Jungle Boogie, let's go, nigga. Let's get the hell yeah. The shit with the live musicians, let's play that. But Joanne, man, I'll slap you if you play that song. The sauce was missing. And so they slowly over the last 40 years changed the sauce and put this artificial sauce in it. That's led up to this culmination, this point that we're in right now. And what I'm saying is we're at a tipping point musically. We're at a tipping point because this slow devolution of our music, again, that wasn't by our choice. My father-in-law told me 40 years ago, he said that, he was at Motown, so his shit was like with Lionel Richie and this stuff with Atlantic Star. The reason why his music with Atlantic Star still sounds great today because he always kept his live musicians. He never ditched them. But he did hear stories from other producers at other labels that they were basically told, if you record with a live band, you're never going to record again in this town. And a lot of musical greats just stopped getting work when the 80s came because the people who controlled our music had a plan to make our music synthetic. And it's my conclusion that this AI is the culmination point to the slow devolution of our music. Because if they could have given us Rihanna in 1981, they would have. But we wouldn't have accepted it. So they had to slowly devolve our music, starting with the instrumentation in the 80s. And then as you get into the late 90s, and they bring in that whisper era. And all the women singing in the late 90s are whispering and shit. And then the whisper era brought in the Estelle era, which brought in the Rihanna era, the Nicki Minaj era, the Cardi B era, the people masquerading as black doing our music. So the way I look at it, AI is taking them motherfuckers out. It's going to be hard for another Iggy Azalea because of AI. It's going to be hard for another Soulja Boy because of AI. It's going to be really hard for another Drake. Drake is probably the last of his kind. Somebody, because all Drake do is go around and see what's hot, see what you're doing, and bite your style and do it himself. And since he got a small half family behind him, he gets to put his music out before you do, and he gets to put that music that he copied off you and what your black ass had going on, and he got to capitalize on it. And Jay-Z also, I know a lot of y'all love Jay-Z. Jay-Z's another one, but Jay-Z just happened to be one that them folks like, and he's their guy. That's all Jay-Z really did too. If you really look back at it, he took Jazzo's swag, and he took Memphis Bleak. Then when he saw State Property was a thing, he took that style. Then when he saw, he see what's going on, he jump ahead of it. And since he got them folks behind him, he gets pushed. But when Jay-Z was around in the early 90s, he was around when Nas and Tupac and Outkast and Biggie was popping off. He couldn't do shit when Jay-Z couldn't do shit in that environment in the early 90s. He couldn't cut through. Jay-Z was older than Nas. Jay-Z couldn't cut through when the real niggas was around. But when the music industry said, okay, yeah, we're going, these artists that are really talking about something, we're not going to sign you niggas. You know what I mean? Jay-Z looked around, he see what's hot. He's very talented. So he jump in on what you got going on, and he'll see your style, and he'll do your style better than you. And Jay-Z rode that wave for 20 years. Jumping in and knowing what style is hot and sounding like that. So as the sound evolves, he can stay ahead of it. And then Drake came along, not quite as talented as Jay-Z, but still talented. The talent to see what's hot and see what's going to be next and jump in on it. And he uses small hat representation to make sure his music hits the wave before yours does. And that's how music has been going for the last 20 years. So the way I see it, AI is taking out all that shit because AI is going to do it better than Jay-Z did. AI is going to do it better than Drake did. So the only people who are going to survive now are the people who can play the sound they got themselves and know how to express it. The only people who are going to survive AI are the musicians that know how to tap into their God self. The musicians that know how to tap into that God within. We all got that God within. And that's where music comes from. Music is a download that we get. I read people's cards. I can read how good of a card you are through your Neptune card. Because Neptune tells me what kind of downloads you get and where your downloads come from. If you have a 10 of clubs in Neptune, you is a musician motherfucker. 10 of clubs motherfucker. Even if you got 10 of clubs, certain cards they're tapped into certain sources. And that's where the music comes from. And people, like, they just channel. Music is a channel. Michael Jackson always say, I don't know where this shit comes from. I just channel it. Same thing with me when I'm on the drums. When I be in the studios in the day, man, I get a song that get thrown my way, and my feeling would tell me to play it this way. I don't know where that shit came from. It wasn't my decision. As a matter of fact, when my ego was involved, when I was in my head, even now when I'm in the studio, if I'm in my head and that decision's coming from my mind, that music don't come out right. You can hear a song when the artist is thinking. Thinking music sound like shit. Music is a feeling. And it's a certain feeling when it comes to our music that only we have the source to tap into. Not because we're better than anyone else, just because we mind our own goddamn business. And this is the feeling that comes through our channel. The musicians in South Africa, they got a different feeling in their channel. The people in the Caribbean and Argentina, they get musical downloads too. But those downloads are on a different channel. And the rest of the world just isn't as interested in the downloads that they get from the universe for their music. It seems to be the people of Earth are most interested in the downloads that the North American Black American gets musically. And that download teaches you how to sing a song, that 0 point, that feeling, that love. Go back and listen to Shaka Khan. Go listen to, what's that song? What's that song by Shaka Khan? Do You Love What You Feel? When she gets to the bridge, I wanna dance off. Don't just listen to the song. Tap into how that feeling. She sings it with a certain feeling where it's like she's using her voice as an instrument to weave and snake through the notes and the music of the song. And that feeling is what you get. You don't even know what the fuck she's saying half the time, but you feel her saying, I want to dance all night. And your black ass is going to get up and want to dance. Michael Jackson, when you listen to Michael Jackson, don't listen to Michael Jackson. Close your eyes and feel Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson had a presence when he sang. His music had a presence. It's the feeling. AI can't get that. AI is empty. AI is just notes. AI is just a sound. Our music isn't a note. Our music isn't a sound. Our music is the feeling. The feeling is what's the music. How you feel. It's the feeling. AI can never get that. Not in a trillion years can it ever get the feeling. Because the feeling is a moment and a presence at a time and a space that comes in through divine download. Now, if one day God decided to change it up and start speaking through computers, then we all fucked up and hell, AI gonna kick our ass. But last I checked, computers ain't got a channel to God. We so that's what I wanna leave it with. Ain't nobody else wanna speak. Later on today, I'm gonna be doing the Instance and Ashtrays dedicated to Herbie Hancock, showing how he evolved music. And we're gonna celebrate the life of Herbie Hancock because he's one of our master musicians who's still alive. And it's my philosophy in life. If you don't, and it's not, I got this from other people, but if you don't celebrate your heroes, you ain't gonna have no heroes. Since we as Black folks ain't been celebrating our music heroes, we're left with the weekend. So I don't want the next generation to have AI be the best music of this generation. So one thing I'm gonna do is do my best to celebrate our heroes alive and well, and the ones that are passed on. But really celebrate those that are alive and show appreciation to them. So hopefully we can develop a culture of appreciation and appreciate our greats and our heroes. And as we develop a culture of celebrating our heroes and our greats, we'll create more heroes because that's what we do. And so we're going to be celebrating Herbie Hancock later on in Cincinnati Strays on Mixcloud, mixcloud.com/DwannB. Get the app right now and hit notifications because they actually do send out notifications. And we're going to be talking about that. Get your tickets for DwannB Live on the 29th of April here in LA. And then the tickets for Dallas will be on sale next week for the comedy show.